And so home I went. Having just met this young lady, I had to go home. And I didn't see her again until I ventured to come for Christmas. But God overruled for us. I went back. I remember walking down into the factory, seeing my foreman, and he said to me, "Oh, back on leave?" Because I'd only not long had 7 days leave. I said, "No, I've just come back from a job. They've sent me home." Oh, he said, "I haven't got work for those that are here." I said, "Thank you very much." And I was making my way out when the old managing director met me. The strange thing was that the man who had victimized me into the army, who was a man 6'4" and built a proportion, he used to dwarf me, a giant of a man, had suddenly developed meningitis a month after I went in the army. He was dead. But the old managing director had been there all my father's lifetime. I met him, and he said, "Oh, you don't need to worry, we'll find you work." I said, "No, sir. Once I put my cards in on Monday morning, you've got me. And I want to know what I'm going to earn before I start work." So I went, got a job in an arms factory. Well, compared to the conditions under which I'd worked, it was very, very easy and comfortable. And after 3 weeks, this firm wrote and said, "We can now offer you full-time employment." I said, "Thank you very much, but I don't want it." The next thing I knew was that I was asked to go to see the National Service officer, not at his office, but at his home. And he said to me, "Well, what's the trouble?" I said, "Have you been in there? Have you ever seen the conditions under which you have to work?" "No." Well, I said, "I know." Well, he said, "You know, they've claimed you out. And if you don't go and work for them, they'll send you back in the army." I said, "Mate, I never asked to come out. I'm not afraid to go back. I've had no father running around trade union branch meetings, get my lad out." This is the sort of thing that's going on. Lads who had been in the territorials and had been called up, and father was a tradesman, and they used to go to union meetings and put pressure on to try and get the lads out of the army, out of the forces. Well, he said, "If I can get you what you want, will you go back?" I said, "Yes." So we arranged to meet, and we went up together to see the managers, and they, although I never saw them, he went in and did the negotiating. It was agreed that I should get the conditions I wanted, and so back I went. And I was there all through the war, and we worked out a very fine scheme when when the young lady was called up and had to do work of national importance. I arranged that she came down and stayed and lived with my sister, and I got her a job in another works. And so we were able to see a bit of each other until beginning of 1944. In fact, the 22nd of January 1944, when we were married at Topcliffe Chapel. It's 40 years ago. And of course, we continue to live in South Wales. Until war was over, and I knew that the firm I worked for would try and get back at me if they possibly could, and try to break the bargain that they had been forced into, which was only a fair bargain after all. It was nothing outrageous. I asked them for trade union rates of pay as a basic minimum wage, and if the piecework output was more than that, I would get it, because it was possible to go to work and through no fault of your own earn nothing at all. And it wasn't your fault, it wasn't your lack of skill. If there was no coal blown through for the furnaces, if the big driving belt in the shop broke, you were just there, and there was nothing, you were not earning anything. And so I asked about a job in Thirsk. And in 1947, just before that big storm broke, on the 20th of January 47, we moved up to Topcliffe. And on the night before I started work at Thirsk, on the following Monday morning, that great storm broke. It was my introduction to northern winters. You know, all through, God has wonderfully blessed us. He gave me a Christian home, Christian parents, Christian friends to influence, and then directed my footsteps to meet a Christian girl from a Christian home where I learned many things. One of the things I learned was how to prepare and put down notes for a sermon. Her father showed me one of his, and that gave me an idea because I'd never had any training. I tried to preach a few times, but never get away with it. Everything went together when I tried to look at notes. But he showed me how he set them out, and that was a great help. And I remember it was before we were married, about 1942. My hometown, it was a port, you see, an embarkation port. And thousands and thousands of men passed through the port going to France. And on furlough in the town at that time was a missionary and his wife and family. And he said to some of the Christians there, can't we get somewhere on the main street where we can get some of these men and women in to hear the gospel? And so they rented a motor showroom. There were no cars to be sold, no new cars. So there were plenty of empty motor showrooms. And they rented one. And they furnished it as a restroom where men and women of the forces could go in, have a cup of tea, sit and write letters, and they could receive gospel literature. And twice a week they had a service. And this missionary was in charge, and the ladies of the different assemblies in the town used to provide refreshments. And it was my mother's turn on this Saturday. Oh, I had the cakes to take down, the buns. And he said to me, where are you preaching tomorrow? I said, me? I'm not preaching. A young fellow like you. And he challenged me that I should be preaching God's word. So I received a call to preach. And it was into the valleys of South Wales that I first went, preaching. And then, of course, in 1947, moving up here led me into closer touch with Methodism. And I joined the Methodist Church at Topcliffe, and it was there that we had very, very happy fellowship. There were a few old stalwarts there. It was a place where there had been a faithful gospel witness, and there were men and women there who knew the saving grace of God. And it was into fellowship with them that I came. And I believed during those years from 1947 to 1952, I believed that we had 4 missions